welcome to another video. So today, as you can tell from the title and the thumbnail, this is my guide to Sarah J Maas. So you're on BookTube. You will have more than likely heard of Sarah J Maas. If you haven't, hi, welcome to BookTube. Sarah J Maas is a very popular fantasy author, and I'm going to tell you all about her now. So I'm going to, in this video, go through the trilogies that Sarah has written, my recommended reading order, who I'd recommend these books to, and also some recommendations of books to read if you really enjoyed Sarah J Maas's work. So let's just get straight into it. So I'm going to go in, I guess, chronological publication order of the series. So I'm going to start off with the first series, which is Throne of Glass. So this is the first series that Sarah got published. She started writing Throne of Glass at age 16, and you can sort of tell. And that's not to be dismissive of her writing at all. It is still fantastic, but it does read very different to the rest of the books in her world. So Throne of Glass is an 8-book series, including a collection of novellas, which I highly recommend reading. How do I even explain Throne of Glass? So Throne of Glass is one of those series where from the starting point to the end point, it has changed so much that you don't recognise the characters from the beginning by the time they've got to the end. It is absolutely amazing in the way that how everything develops so much. But to start off with Throne of Glass, we follow Selena, who is an assassin who has been in prison. She is fighting in these trials to become the royal assassin and to basically earn her freedom. Well, she'll earn herself to become the royal assassin, which means that she will no longer be in prison, which is all good. As the series progresses, we do move away from the assassin plotline. We discover the Fae, we discover other sort of parts of the world. We discover magic. There's other people brought in. We've got shifters, we've got witches, we've got dragons, and we travel a lot more expansively across the world here. And it's honestly absolutely fantastic. So the world is Aurelia. I'm saying most of the world. So I've actually only got the first 3 books in the series with me because I lent the rest to my sister, who I have made read Throne of Glass. But yeah, this is the world that we've got in the Throne of Glass. So we're based, when we meet Selena, she's here in the prison at the salt mines. We've then got Rifthold over here, which I believe is the capital. We've got our different kind of countries, and then we've got another country over this side, which is the deserted land, and then we've got the witch kingdoms up here as well, which do all come into play. And you've also got a little arrow to Wendling. Wendling does come into play later on. But this series is, like I said, it is very expansive. It is huge. These first 3 books are quite diddy. They're all about 300 pages. These ones here. After these 3, they get a lot bigger, with the final book in the series, Kingdom of Ash, I think it's, well, my edition, my paperback edition is just shy of 1,000 pages. I think it's like 997 or something. So they do get a lot bigger. But honestly, the payoff is worth it. These books are so good. So that's a very bad description of Throne of Glass. I'm then going to go into A Court of Thorns and Roses. I've got the old editions here because I like them. A Court of Thorns and Roses is again another series where between book 1 and book 3, our characters go through a massive change, and I would say that they're not unrecognisable like they are to the extent in Throne of Glass, but they do change a lot. So I would say with both of these series, if you didn't enjoy Throne of Glass, just try the next one. If you didn't enjoy ACOTAR, try the next one. They change a lot. ACOTAR itself is a Beauty and the Beast retelling, but that is only within this book, and that doesn't carry on throughout the rest of the series. But in this one we are in Prithian, which is a completely different world. At this point there is no crossover whatsoever. We're following Feyre, who is human, who is forced to go and live with the Fae. She's killed a wolf, and the punishment was she has to go and live with this Fae lord. The humans believe that the Fae are evil and that they kill humans just for fun, which isn't 100% a lie. So Feyre has to go and live with this Fae lord. Stuff happens. As we carry on through the series, we meet different Fae lords, different courts, and we again there's sort of transformations of characters, so they do change quite a lot. The Court of Thorns and Roses series, there's currently, I would say, 5 books in the series. However, you've got the main trilogy, Thorns and Roses, Mist and Fury, and Wings and Ruin, otherwise known as ACOTAR, ACOMAF, ACOWAR. These ones I would say are your main trilogy. You've then got A Court of Frost and Starlight, which is a novella. I have read this in a couple of times. It's not my favourite. It's basically a Christmas story, but obviously there isn't Christmas in this world. But it's like a winter solstice story. It's very cute. It's very fluffy, but it does sort of tie the end of ACOWAR into the next era, which is Silver Flames. But I don't think this is, if you miss this one out, you're not going to really miss anything too much. We then go into Silver Flames, A Court of Silver Flames. This is the first in, it's going to be a new trilogy of standalones. Bear with me. So whereas ACOTAR follows the same characters, so follows Feyre and her partner throughout, being mindful of spoilers here. So it follows Feyre and her partner throughout the series. These ones are going to follow, this series is going to follow 3 different couples in each book. So Court of Silver Flames follows Nesta and Cassian. We don't know when the next 2 books are going to come out or who they're going to follow, but there is obviously a lot of discussion in the fandom of who they want their favourites to end up with. So this series does continue. It is in the same world, it is with the same characters, but it is a different story arc. So let's go down this pile, which is now slightly precarious. We then move into the 3rd series that Sarah J Maas has written, which is Crescent City, starting with House of Earth and Blood. This is going to be a trilogy. The 3rd book has been announced, coming out in January, and this is set in a modern city following Bryce Quinlan. City is Lunathian. Can't talk. In the world of Midgard. So this one, again, we're following Bryce. It's set in a modern day world. We've got angels, we've got werewolves, we've got fae, we've got humans. Basically every magical creature you can think of features in this series. It's only 2 books out so far, which is House of Earth and Blood and House of Sky and Breath. Okay, so as I said, I haven't got all of the Throne of Glass books with me because I lent them to my sister, but I would suggest starting off with Throne of Glass. Throne of Glass is currently the biggest series. I don't know if it is by word count, but it definitely is by number of books. And I think it gives a good introduction to the world. This one is also very much a YA. So this is suitable, I'd say for it's older YA, so sort of 16 to 18. I probably wouldn't go very much younger than that, but again, that's up to you and your own reading tastes. The series as a whole, there is some romance, there is a tinsy tiny bit of sex in it, but again, nothing that's sort of overly graphic, and I don't think it's anything that's too bad for kind of older YA audience. So the Throne of Glass series has a couple of starting points. You can start with the prequel, Assassin's Blade. These are the series of novellas, or you can start with Throne of Glass. I would strongly recommend starting with Throne of Glass. The reason being is that if this is your first foray into the world, this is going to give you a bit more information about the characters, and you're going to start to get to know who they are. So I would recommend reading the first two books, Throne of Glass and Crown of Midnight, before going to the novellas, which are Assassin's Blade. This is a prequel. The events in this one does happen in time before Throne of Glass, but I would suggest reading it third, just because at that point you know who the characters are, and what happens in this book feels a little bit more, you feel a little bit more strongly towards those characters because you've already got that basis of them. And the reason I'd suggest reading it third is because this is the sort of break point between the assassin storyline, the trials, the human world, and then on the other side we've got more of the fae and the kind of the metamorphosis, let's say. Now, because I'm going to have this open to remember what all of the books are. So we've then got Heir of Fire, Queen of Shadows, Empire. Heir of Fire and Queen of Shadows. Those two are books 3 and 4, 4 and 5, 4 and 5 because we're reading 3. This is very confusing. I'm sorry. Throne of Glass 1, Crown of Midnight 2, Assassin's Blade I would say 3. I then do Heir of Fire as number 4, Queen of Shadows as number 5. Like I said, those ones we're then on the other side of the world, we're following more of the fae. We've then got 6 and 7, Empire of Storms and Tower of Dawn. I'm going to have all these ones up here. You can read them separately, or you can do a tandem read of them, where you read one chapter of Empire of Storms, one chapter of Tower of Dawn, one chapter of Empire of Storms, one of Tower of Dawn, etc. I haven't personally done that. I've read them separately. The reason that people do suggest doing that sort of tandem read style is because there's an event that happens at the end of Empire of Storms that makes you want to get on to the next book immediately. However, Tower of Dawn happens somewhere completely different characters, and there's a completely different storyline. So you have then that one book break almost from the main plot line before you get to Kingdom of Ash and find out what's actually going to happen next, which can be a little bit off-putting. I would say, however, do not skip Tower of Dawn. While it's generally decided to be not the strongest of the books in the series, but I think it tells you a lot of very, very important information. I think it is a very important book to read. So I would say that the reading order there is completely personal preference. I read them separately and it didn't massively impact my enjoyment. All of the books are out now, so it's not like you've got to wait 12 months for the next book to come out because everything's released. So for me, that's how I worked it. If you prefer to do the tandem read, I thought that I would find that quite confusing, which is why I didn't do it. But you know, if you think you would be happy with that and want to do that tandem read, go for it. I would say by the time you get to the end of, I'm forgetting my names again, of Queen of Shadows, see how much you're enjoying the series. Do you want to continue in that side? Because like I said, if you're really enjoying that, then maybe do it the tandem read, so you're getting them both read and you can kind of keep that Fae world storyline going. If you're just kind of like, I'm enjoying it, I'm just going to read whatever, go in publication order. So that's my reading order, suggested reading order for Throne of Glass. I would suggest read the whole Throne of Glass series before moving on, but that's just me. I personally like to finish a series and then move on to the next one. She says that's an absolute lie. No, I don't. But when I'm reading like for the full universe, I would rather read the whole series first. The second series I'd recommend going into is ACOTAR. ACOTAR is, I would say, new adult. It was published as YA, but this one's not too bad. Oh, gosh, I got a cat joining me now. But Court of Mist and Fury is very smutty. Hello, my sweet girl. This one is, yes, has very graphic sex scenes. So I would say new adult, if not adult. Tea break. This series, like I said, I would read this one after you finished with Throne of Glass. You are in a completely different world. You're in a completely different, completely different world, following completely new characters. It's nice. So it doesn't really matter if you've read this one first or Throne of Glass first, but I personally feel Throne of Glass first kind of leads you into Sarah's writing style. And then this one gets slightly more adult, slightly smuttier as you get through. Like I said, there is smut, there are sex scenes. And by the time you get to Silver Flames, which was published as an adult book, the sex in here is quite graphic. But this one is definitely adult. However, again, it's your own personal preference. I don't think it is so bad, like so smutty that it's gone to the side of erotica. It is a smutty novel, but it's not complete filth. But I would say finish the whole of the ACOTAR Thorns and Roses series to get right up to Silver Flames before getting into the next series, which is Crescent City. So, like I said, Crescent City, I would say read this series after you've read everything else by Sarah J Maas. For House of Earth and Blood, it's not so important. If you've not finished the rest of the books in the series, it's not the end of the world. However, you want to have read everything else she has written before you get to Sky and Breath. So my advice would be leave this series until you've read everything else. The reason is, and again, I can see my tabs in this one, I'm not going to mention any spoilers or anything, but something that happens at the end of Sky and Breath starts to tie the Sarah J Maas universe together. We start to see how the three different series can or could be combined, could be joined. So I think this is really important that you've read everything else before you get to this series, to this book particularly. Her next book, which is the third one in the Crescent City series, I think that's going to be a lot more, it's going to be really important that you've read everything else. Again, I'm not going to go into any sort of spoilers or anything in this video, but yes, I think the third one is going to be, is going to feature things from the other series that will make no sense whatsoever if you haven't read the other series. So yeah, my advice would be read the whole Throne of Glass series. There are a few different combos in there. Read the whole ACOTAR series, and then once you've read all of them, get on to Crescent City. Now Crescent City, these books are big. They are adult. They are published as adult. However, they're adult in the fact that they drink, they swear, they smoke, they do drugs. The sex in these two books happens about there. You've got nearly 1,000 pages, slightly more than 1,000 pages of build up before there is any sex in these books. So if you're worried about smutty reads, these aren't. They are not smutty at all. In fact, in my opinion, by the time we finally do get to the sex scenes, it's just a bit, you're like, oh, I've had so much build up, I'm over it now. But they are my recommendations on the reading order. I would say, like I said, that for all of them, I'd say Throne of Glass, older YA, ACOTAR, again, kind of 18, 19, older YA, new adults. Crescent City, again, I would say Crescent City and Silver Flames, I'd say adult, but whatever you feel most comfortable with. I've read all of them again as an adult because I am old. And finally, my recommendations for books to read after you've read Sarah J Maas's books. I've only managed to find 3, so please do leave me comments down below of books that you would recommend. But I'm going to start off with this one. These Hollow Vows by Lexi Ryan. If you liked the ACOTAR series, read this one. This one to me was so similar to ACOTAR. It almost felt like a retelling, but in a really good way. So in this one we follow I can't remember the characters' names, a human girl, Bree, who goes to the Fae to make a deal with them and ends up basically with like a human and a Fae kind of fighting for her affection. I think it's a human and a Fae. It might be two Faes. I can't remember. I think it's two Faes from opposing courts fighting for her affection. So if you liked that kind of Fae court life of ACOTAR, read these Hollow Vows. That's good. Next, I'm going to say The Prison Healer by Lynette Noni. If you've been on my channel for the last few months, you'll realise I am currently obsessed with the Prison Healer series by Lynette Noni. But this is so, so good. If you enjoyed the trials of Throne of Glass and the kind of tension, again, from the Throne of Glass series, give this one a read. I mean, give it a read anyway, it's fantastic. This one, we follow Kiva, I'm so bad at names, who is in a prison. She ends up having to do these trials by element, by magic, which if she survives, she gets to leave, but no one has ever survived. This series is fantastic, really highly recommend. And slightly left-wing recommendation is The Assassin's Apprentice by Robin Hobb. Again, if you enjoyed that sort of assassin vibe from Throne of Glass, try giving this one a go. Robin Hobb is much, much, much slower paced. Her writing style is kind of bleaker, darker, but if you enjoyed the kind of assassin storyline, give this one a go, it's fun. I couldn't think off the top of my head of any fantasy that I've read. I'm actually looking at that one. I might go. I've not read it, but I might say Jade City by Fonda Lee as a rec for Crescent City. I believe this is set in Shanghai? Hong Kong. I nearly by there. I believe it is set in a city in a kind of modern day environment. I don't know if it is set as modern as Crescent City is. So Crescent City is very much an urban fantasy where you've got, you know, where the characters have got phones, they've got the internet. They are in a very modern setting, but it is also very high fantasy. So I'm going to say Jade City, but I'm not 100% sure how well that fits because I haven't read it myself. So if you've got any recommendations for me on books that people will enjoy after they've read Crescent City, please do let me know. So that is it for my Sarah J Maas guide. Please do let me know if you have read any Sarah J Maas, what your favourite book of hers is, and like I said, any recommendations on what to read next. If you like this video, please leave me a like, comment down below, subscribe if you would like to, and I will see you in the next one.